side. I'm pretty sure you probably don't want to speak to the sales guy, but I'll be able to kind of put you in touch with Pablo or Alan or whatever resource is appropriate based on where you guys are today in your individual remits. Okay? So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Pablo, and we'll see you all later.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone. My name is Pablo Luna. I'm a solution consultant at Muelsofts. I've been in the company for 3 years now. And before that, I was the technical leader at VPN products that then was acquired by Oracle. And so I've been in integration for some time now, almost 10 years. First of all, who knows about Muelsofts already? Raise your hands, something? Okay. So I wasn't planning on actually talking about a lot of our Muelsofts products. Usually when we go to this kind of developer conference, we try to show something that we are looking at where we're finding companies in the market, and what's the take that we take on that. We're more than welcome to talk more about Muelsofts, what we do. But to keep it very simple, we have an integration platform. Typically, you can think of it as an ESP. It's not just an ESP, it's a little bit more than that. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but we have an integration platform on-premise, integration platform on the cloud as well. That's entirely on the cloud. We can take more questions and answers at the end if you want to talk more about that. The subject of today, I think that something we want to talk about today is APIs. And basically, the new challenge of how APIs is actually the new challenge of APIs. I'm going to talk about what it means, but basically it's about the user experience of APIs. It's not a new term, it's been around for some time, but now we're trying to analyze it and actually propose a solution for it. That is not just, doesn't come actually only from Muelsofts, also comes from other companies that we partner to get this together. The first thing to think about is where are companies using APIs today? And this is not only for enterprise, for companies, big enterprises, but also for startups, SaaS companies, cloud platforms, etc. So what you're going to find today is you're going to find a bunch of internal APIs that can do a lot of legacy modernization. They can be data services, they can be business services, all of them exposing APIs in some way and through some kind of protocol. You're going to find a lot of B2B APIs. Again, this has been around for more than 10 years now, especially in the B2B e-commerce market. We're also going to find more product APIs where you are externalizing your internal products as public APIs so that those can be consumed by other people outside. And then you have more open web APIs that are actually more in the SaaS platform or platform as a service, iPaaS, BPaaS, all those flavors of things in the cloud. So if you think about APIs, then you can think about that all these APIs have different usages, these different target audiences. Some of them internal are for the team to consume, so they have different security concerns. Some are intended to be for developers out there to consume and start using your products, because that at the end is going to be a new revenue channel for your company. And that's how companies are looking at APIs today, as a new revenue channel. So it's very important to start considering who is going to be the consumer of that API and enabling that, but also manage the entire life cycle at the same time. So we think about the life cycle of APIs. Basically, what we're going to think about is these 4 main steps. The first one is the plan and design. This is where you are usually going to say, okay, let's imagine a public API, right? We have our company, we say, okay, we want to publish this public API. So we have a new kind of products that we're going to expose, right? So you have to start planning what do we want, what product do we want to get out there, how they can engage. So you start working on designing this API that people are going to start using. Integrate and run is basically you design the API, then you want to implement it, run in a server so people can start hitting it. Once people start doing that, well, basically what you think about is how you're going to manage that, different versions, how I'm going to promote applications internally in order to consume that and manage all that part of the APIs. But at the same time, I want to be able to monitor what are the analytics, who's using it, how they're using it, what are they using it for, how often. A lot of things that information they're going to need in order to exploit this API in a proper way. And last but not less important is engage your developers. The main thing about APIs is adoption. If you have a part API that is huge, it's perfect, and nobody uses it, then it's a complete failure. So you need to engage your consumers and make sure that they actually like it. So that actually takes us back to the APX, or user experience of APIs. This is what people are trying to think about, is how can we improve the usability of our APIs? Because it's all about adoption. If I expose an API, if I provide a payment gateway, and my API is very cumbersome and difficult to use, and my competition has a very lean, clean API, guess which one the developers are going to choose. So you need to choose one and make one that is very easy to use. So that takes us back to one of the main points that I wanted to talk about today, which is how to go into the first stage, the design step of an API. And then if you want and we have time, we can cover the other ones. But let's go into the design one. One of the ways of doing that, and this is what we are working on today, is define a contract. This can sound a little scary. What it would mean. The idea is not, let's take the good things about a contract, and let's try not to go where the whistle went, right? So contract is good in a lot of ways, because it actually, it's, there. So a contract actually is very good for a lot of things. A contract is the first interaction point with your customers. So your customers, there are a lot of, will interact with the API, sometimes even before they interact with the UI. There are a lot of products out there today that don't even have a UI. They have a developer portal that explains how to use the API, and then they monetize their API, and that's it. So that API becomes actually the first interaction that with your company and your developers and your clients will have. It's also, it's going to reflect your company or your brand. How it's going to be seen through your APIs. Is it going to be something that is very modern and very agile, or is it something that's going to be very cumbersome and difficult to use? So that's going to be a game changing. Now, what do you want your contract to be? Well, you want it to be very descriptive in terms that I can go there and understand exactly what the API should do and what the API is going to give me. I'm going to be able to understand how I'm going to call that API and what I'm going to get back. But also, you need to be easy to design. I need to be able to define my contract in an easy way without having all the hurdles that I had with it doesn't need to be complex. If I have a contract, I need to be able to implement it in different languages easily, especially because with current APIs are all focused, or the majority today is going to REST and JSON. Actually, JSON took over XML some days ago, according to Programmable Web. If you know, do you know Programmable Web? It's a directory of APIs. So it's a very popular directory of APIs out there, and they come up with a lot of statistics. That's one of their statistics. So what's the key things that you need to think about an API? Well, is to delight your consumers, delight the developers that are going to use it. That's going to drive adoption. If I have a Whistle API, and it's not that this is proven, it's not something that comes from us. If you have a Whistle API, you have a REST API, guess which one the developers are going to like? REST. And within REST, how easy is it going to be to consume it? How easy it is to understand what message should I send in order to get what I want? And what am I going to get back? So you need to, in order to delight your consumers. So how are you going to do that? Which is basically going to take you to the APX term. First is design for your developers. Design an API that they're going to use, and it's easy for them to use. Also, is iterate quickly, involve them. Involve the very early stage, so you can interact with them. So you're not talking about new concepts here. We're talking about things that are happening in the industry for a long time, we're just applying them to APIs. And of course, gather feedback and include that, right? So that will give you this iterative approach to improve APIs. Now, what we have done is, after realizing all this, after realizing that this is where APIs were going, and now we're going to go into more technical stuff, we said, okay, we need to come up with a solution. So what we did, what Muelsofts did, is created a work group together with a lot of companies like Intuit, PayPal, Box, Muelsofts, those are main ones. We came up with a specification called RAML, which is open source. You can go there to raml.org. I'm going to show the website, I'm going to show what it is. But this is a description language, it's a markup language based on YAML that allows you actually to create these contracts for RESTful APIs. It stands for RESTful API Modeling Language. And as I say, it allows you to actually model a REST API without adding more complexity to it. So let's think of an example. And one of the main goals that we wanted to get out of the RAML specification is that it's human readable as well as computer readable. That was the main goal. Otherwise, it's not too complex. So this is how it actually looks like. If you think about it, let's look at this as a simple specification of a RESTful API. I'm going to have a title, I have a version, I have a resource called users, then I have the different actions that I can make to it. So I can do a get. It has some parameters. So you have a parameter that's a name, and it's going to filter by name, right? Then I'm going to be able to create a user. I'm going to specify the user ID. This is going to be a variable, so it's not a part of the path. It's a variable in the path. And then I can do different actions to it. So it's very easy to understand by reading it. But the good thing is, since it's based in YAML, it's also computer readable. It's very easy to actually parse this and create something based on this. I'm going to show what's out there already. Now, that API that we showed is very, very simple. It doesn't have a lot of complex things, and we know that in the real life we have much more complex things. So RAML already supports resource types, which is a partial definition of a resource that you can reuse. So if every resource has authentication method, because every resource needs to be authorized by an OAuth token, then you can define that once and reuse it on every resource that you create in RAML. It also has traits, which is, again, is a partial method definition that you can reuse within your RAML specification. So you find a pattern once or a template once, and then you reuse it every time you need. And I'm going to show more details of this. Now, this is not something that we have actually invented. It's in that REST API book, design book. If you haven't read it, I recommend that one. It actually talks about all these concepts. So it's been there for a while now. So this is how you actually use resource types and traits. Here you can define schemas, resource types, and traits. These collapse, so we can focus on important things. Here is the resource users. We can see that is a type collection of users. Now, the definition of a user is defined within schemas. Collection is a resource type, where we can see if we want to page it, what's the method, how many we want, if it's paged or not. So we define all that as a collection, which is within resource types. And within traits, we have secure. So we defined within here what secure means, and then we just use it. So if I want that to be this API to be secured by OAuth, then I just define that in traits, and then we use it in every single resource. Now, it actually covers all the things that you would like and do you actually need on HTTP and REST. So within the base URI, if you decide to have the versioning in the URI, you can just put it there as a parameter. You can specify the subpaths. You can have templates. You can have query parameters. You can define what they look like right in the specification. You can define what headers you want. And then you can define different response types. You can have the 200 for OK, 500 for server error. You can define what headers are going to look like in the response. More importantly, you're going to be able to define the schemas and examples for every single MIME type that you support. Okay, so if I'm reading this, I know that if I do a get on this URI, I'm going to get something that's going to look like this. So by reading this, I automatically know what should I send. I know that I can send a get. I know that I have parameters in this query that I need to send. It has authentication, and this is what I'm going to get back. So we talk about, I showed you the example of where we have a body. Now, if you think about a post, for example, when you want to create something, you need to send a message. So here, when we're specifying that the body of the post is going to be a MIME time JSON, the schema can be defined by user JSON, so you can define it inline, similar to this. You can define the JSON schema right here. You can refer to a schema defined within the schema section, or you can also include it from a different file, and then reference that one. So when you're creating this, it's actually very easy to use and reuse things that you have already created. If you need to have the form data, of course, it's already supported as well. You shall need to use the right MIME type. So let's jump to it and see how this actually works. So this is the RAML.org. You can see the URL up here. As I said, it's an open source standard. All the specification and everything is in GitHub. You can just go and check it out. And it has a documentation on how it works, and you're going to find a lot of details up here on how to use traits, and a lot of these things. Now, if you go within projects, you're going to find a lot of projects that people and companies have been working on. The RAML spec, of course, is part of the RAML workgroup. There's a parser here, a JavaScript parser and a Java parser. We're actually going to use the two of these parsers today. But this is how we're going to use the RAML to actually do something with it, based on the specification. And then there are a lot of projects out there. Some of them are part of the what we provide within the Muelsofts solution. The API designer allows us to quickly create a RAML file. I'm going to show that today. API console is a graphical interface for that same specification. Instead of being text-based, it's more GUI-based with boxes that you can click in. API notebook we're going to show today as well. That is a web is persisted and is a JavaScript workspace where you can actually consume and show how to use an API. I'm going to show that today again. API kit is a way of taking the RAML file and implementing that API in runtime, and then you can deploy it. We're going to show how we do that with our products. Then there are some other things out there. For example, this is a plugin for SOAP UI. This is something that the founder, the founder of SOAP UI created. When he found the specification, he created a plugin, so you can easily get SOAP UI and create a test case or consume the API that you're publishing based on the RAML specification. we're going to use the API notebook that I mentioned earlier today. So let's start with the design time. So this is how the designer looks like. I'm going to create a new file. Can everybody see that? Yep. Can you read it? Perfect. So I'm going to put a title. Let's put songs API. I'm going to put a title. Then down here, I have a lot of things that I can do with it. I'm going to start with a version. So you can actually very easily start competing with things from this palette down here. You can just write things. So let me add a new resource. I'm going to put songs. Display name, maybe songs. Then I can specify what I want to do. So I can get the context if I don't know what I want. Control space, give you that. If you just write, then you can say I want to do a get. I want a description to get songs. I'm not going to specify a body or anything like that, responses, but if I wanted to, I could. And you can see down here that this is contextual. So it knows where I am, and it allows me to create the responses, the body, and allows me to complete my definition. Instead of doing that, I'm going to just put. Let me show you how it works with this one. So I can go there, here, and click on put. You can say create a song. And what you can see here on the right-hand side, that's the console. That's the API console. So that's the graphical view of the API. I can actually see the requests, the responses, or even try this API. Let's put some real data here. Instead of designing everything, I'm going to just copy songs API that I created before. So this is how it looks like. I have a base URI, have a title. Then I have some albums, artists, and songs that are available. If I check on the songs, I know I can do a get. It has a parameter which is the gender. And it has different responses. 200 for OK. And I can see the example of how it's going to look like. I can do a get on a specific ID for that song, a specific song. And I know the detail, what the response is going to look like, and I can do a delete. If I go here, then I can see what the console will look like. Okay? And this is the same console that you can get as documentation for your APIs. And behind this, on the back, you can even have a mock service, which is something that we're working on. So we're going to create a mock service automatically based on the information on this YAML file. What that means is I can go here to the console. I know exactly what I need to do. And I can actually do a click here and get some data back. Or I can do a post some information. You can do the validation and come back with the results based on the example data. What does this mean for you? That when you're designing your API, because so far we haven't think about how we're going to implement this, right? We're just thinking about what the API should look like. What do we want to provide our developers with? And then we can see how we're going to interact with the API. So once we design this API, we're going to know that people are going to, first, it's useful. Second, that people are going to like it because we can get feedback from them. So this is the, now I have designed an API, right? Instead of showing how to implement it, which I can do actually next, I'm going to leave it for the second step. I want to show you this, how in Muelsoft we have used the JavaScript parser of this specification to bring another tool for you to use. And that's what we call the API, the notebook. This notebook, let me go to API notebook. So this notebook actually allows you to create examples very easily that you can share with people. How are they going to look like? Well, basically like this. There's going to be some text and some code. And you can actually, we're going to show how we can create this example, right? And we can run the code. So if I get here, I can actually run this piece of code, and I get here the execution of that piece of JavaScript. If I have something here, for example, API.create client songs, and I specify the songs normal file. And I'm going to be able to create a JavaScript client based on their specification. So let's see how it looks like. Let me create a new one. So I'm going to do API. We have context. So I'm going to call it songs. Oops. And the specification is going to be RAML songs. Okay. That's running. So what happened just now, if I go songs, now I have albums, artists, and songs. That's exactly what was in the RAML specification file that we just created. If you can see what I did here in these steps, I said create a client named songs from the RAML specification file. So it's going to read the specification file and automatically creating a JavaScript client for it. If I want, I could just do songs dot and do a get. I can see here the response of that call. So I know that if you return an array in the body, song ID 1, the title, not party like an API party. I can see the headers that were of that response. I can see the status of that response. If I want to, I can actually insert some text saying, actually, let's do it in the previous one. Here, I'm going to insert the text that says, let's get some songs. And before this one, I'm going to do the song. Oops. Okay, so what I can do now, for example, is just save this. First of all, I'm going to put here a title, songs notebook. I'm going to save this. I'm already logged in with my user, but if I weren't, actually what this is doing is creating a list on my API Hub account. So it's actually something you can share with anyone you want. If you go here, you can share this directly to this page where anyone can see the each notebook. I'm going to show how that will look like. So I'm going to copy this. But it also creates a gist under your GitHub account as I showed. So let me go to my gist account. You can see here the gists. So you can see that it's just a markdown. What we are doing is we are taking all the information that you create in that nice console and creating a gist that you can just post in your page, post in your documentation, or you can leverage our designer so the people that you're sharing it with can actually run it themselves. You can see here, it's the same text that I showed before. I'm logged in, so I can modify it. But basically, what the people will do is they will come here and, well, they will click play. What does this mean? That I just created an example of how to use my API. I can give that to the developer, saying, do you want to consume, or do you want to make a payment with my API? Check this example. And they can just execute it from there and see how it behaves. And they can change it, they can come here, change whatever they want, and play with it and see how it fits. Now, what we are doing, we build all this based on the RAML specification. That's the power of having that contract. Any questions?
Yeah, is there a cost involved using the notebook and
No. No, you can just go there and start using it.
okay.
Do you have like a desktop version of this, or is it just need to connect from the internet?
You can download it right locally if you want.
Okay.
The code is there, you can it's in GitHub.
I'm talking about the API developer itself. The developer itself.
And you can download it and write it. Yeah, it's a Git.
On the Microsoft.
Yeah.
I'm calling this ship again.
Any other questions? Okay. So let me show you one more thing. Let's imagine that we have this API. One other tool that we have created is we have this API. We design it first, so we have this in the API designer. Nice. We already interacted with our developers. We know that they like it. Let's implement it. Right. Let's implement this. We need to put something executing and running this API in the back, right? So what we have done is we created an API kit, which is a plugin that creates a new application based on the ROML file. So this is the Muel Studio. This is actually a graphical tool to create integrations, flows. This is our IDE, it's based on Eclipse, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a new project. I'm going to songs API server. I'm going to choose a runtime. This is because you support different runtimes from this editor, so you can choose the one you want. Muel ESB server is if you want to deploy this locally to your Muel server. Cloud Hub is if you want to take this and deploy it in the cloud. I'm going to show you how you can do that if you want to. Then you can, of course, support Maven and a lot of things, but let's go straight to the example. So I'm going to choose that I want to create an API using API kit. So I'm going to choose my songs RAML file. I'm going to click Finish. So let's look at what was created. Right here, what I have is, this is a flow. So these are a lot of components that come with Muel, and you can use to create integration. The first flow is actually exposed in HTTP endpoint. If I look at the details of that, I can see that I'm going to be listening for connections on the port 8081. And then I can see actually localhost 8081 API, that's the path. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do our API kit router. So that's what I'm going to do is going to route the message that comes in these different flows, depending on what was the action that the user is doing. So if I'm doing a get on songs, and I can specify the ID, it's going to go to this flow. If I'm going to do a get on albums, it's going to go to this flow. And in there, I can actually do whatever I want. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm setting the payload to be a text. I'm actually not doing anything. But if I wanted to, what I could do is I could do a transformation and send this to Salesforce, for example. Okay, and this is actually a graphical transformation tool that allows me to create transformation graphical by dragging and dropping things. This is something I could do. So every time someone comes and gets a request, I will do a transformation and get my songs from Salesforce and send them back. This automatically comes with a lot of connectors. But if I want more, I can just go to Help, Install New Software. Here I can choose the repository that I want. And here I can see a lot of different connectors that are out there. So we have more than 150 connectors.
Are they all free or?
Some of them are free, some of them are an enterprise version.
So is the license application or some of them?
So some of them, so the only ones that are, these are the only ones that have license requirements.
Okay, the new
HL7, that's for health. Civil.
Okay, for the order.
SAP, yeah, Civil for then SAP. West3MQ, those require enterprise version. And we can talk about more.
Are they JCA?
Sorry?
Are they JCA compliant? Are they built on top of JCA model?
Which one?
Those adapters. Are they adapters or?
No, they're connected, so that's why you connect and get information from these other systems. So for example, if I want to get information from Salesforce, I can say, let's imagine I want to create something in Salesforce. I can say create, I can specify the object, it can be a lead, and then I say where I'm going to get the information. And the system actually manages all this realization and creating the message and sending that to Salesforce. What you do need to create is how you're going to connect to it. And that's, you can use it here. So where you use OAuth or Salesforce SOAP interface. And then you specify user, password, token. But we take care of everything, all the other things. And this is the same for Twitter, email, whatever you want. Okay. Let me just delete this because otherwise it's not going to run. So I have my application. I can save this, and if I want, I can run it. So let me just run this. So the IDE actually has the Mule embedded in it. So I can just click Run as Mule application. And it starts the server. Now I can go to my browser. So I can see the console. Okay, this is actually running locally in the IDE. And if I want to, I could actually call that URL. API songs. I can see here it's actually running. Okay. So again, one more thing that we have done, we created this tool that actually allows you to get the RAML file and do implementation of that API very easily. So important things to consider. RAML is one way of specifying this contract for REST APIs. The idea is that it will allow you to improve the engagement with the developers, allow you to understand what you want, what value you want to provide as a company, in a way that is going to be easy to consume, that's going to encourage adoption. Some tools that are out there that you can use. The API designer, you can just go there and create your API, as we just shown. You can have the API notebook to create these shared examples. Actually, these examples I can share, and then your developers can go and just run to show how they can consume your API, all based on the RAML specification file. And the data that's going to return is going to be based on the example data you enter in the contract. So you know if it's going to be useful before you start developing or implementing it in any technology that you want to implement it. And of course, we have a entire platform around APIs that solves all the 4 steps that we showed before. Before going there is a plugin, for example, that allows you to create a JuxRS implementation of that API based on the RAML file. If you go to raml.org, you can find the project. And you also have the SOAP UI plugin, right? So there's a lot of tools that are being created, and there are many more in the pipeline. In terms of our solution and what we provide, we basically have an entire platform to support integration and APIs. The Mule Studio, what I just showed you today, is an IDE based on Eclipse to actually basically create integrations and expose these APIs and implement the backend of the APIs. RAML tooling is the API designer, the API notebook, and other tools that you can use. And of course, then we have here in the middle a lot of the tools to actually run the implementation of the API, the connectors that allow you to connect to other things very easily. API manager, a way to actually manage all your APIs, different versions, how you deprecate APIs, how you know who is using which API, how are they using it, a lot of analytics and a lot of information about how people are using it. You can find it here. You can also define and apply policies at runtime. So your developer, for example, don't think about authentication. They just implement the API that we showed. And then with the API manager, you can say, OK, now this API has OAuth at runtime. And you can do those kind of policies. Or quality of service. You can say, OK, now in order to consume an API, we're talking about runtime, right? We did the REST with the API, as we just shown. No API, no quality of service. At runtime, I can say now, in order to use this API, you need to have a contract key, and you want to have three requests per second, or 500 requests per second. You can have different tiers. You can assign consumers to each tier, and you can manage them from there. You can do all that at runtime using the API manager. The API gateway is actually a small, lightweight gateway. It's basically, if you know what API is the facade pattern, well, the facade is going to be implemented in the gateway, and that's where you're actually going to apply the policies. So you don't touch your internal implementation, everything happens on the facade. Here you can also implement it from DOS attacks, and implement the security or SSL termination, and all things that you can implement at this level. Business Intent Enterprise Management, I'm going to actually give you all information about how the API is being used, how your applications are running, not only for the API, but also for integration applications. Any questions?
I'm interested in the free version of this. All right. So at what point we have the free version, the lightweight one that we can actually use at client side just to play around with the products, and then obviously as it grows, then obviously it becomes more commercialized. Just like the JoziJUG guys are doing. You know, you've got the free version, and then as it becomes more serious, then you start plugging in, the license bit. Do you have something like that where we can play around with the free version until we get the clients to buy into it, and then when they buy into it and very good use case to basically sell this product, then we start talking about licensing and stuff. Do you have something like that? Yeah.
So two answers to that. One is if you want to go immediately, this part, which is the on-premise ESB integration platform, has a community version. It has a lot of things that we showed today. What doesn't have is support. So if you need support, you need to go to the forums. And we have a very active forums. And it doesn't have some of the components that we showed, but the API kit and all the API designer and the notebook is all there.
It's not there.
It is there.
It's all in there.
Yeah. So you can go to the URL that I showed, or go to ram.org and you have all the access from there. Okay. So you can go and create your API using the API designer. You can go and share with the notebook, and you can implement it using the API kit. Right? And you can run it from there. You don't get any of this. The part over here.
So the API manager.
The API manager and gateway, that's all the enterprise version. If you ask me, there are a lot of reasons why we would like to have this from the beginning. So that's why what I recommend is talk to the guys outside, and they can tell you actually how you can get trial keys and how to help you to get to these tools.
See, the problem is that there's so many, because I work in that space. I run a small company that focuses on integration. Right? Yeah. So our partner right now is Oracle. Okay. So we basically play around with the Fusion stack. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's a bit difficult. Basically, convince a client to move from one stack to the next stack until they actually see how easy it is to. And in order for one to see how easy it actually works, you need to have that time to play around with it and so forth. Yeah. And buy the client into that new technology. That if it's actually really working properly, giving more business value than the other. So for me, it's maybe more attractive to have something that I can play around with all the different features, right? So I can compare with the different options that I have, in the market. You do have a few of them that, all built on top of Tomcat. Everybody's kind of still differentiating it, but depending on the client that you're dealing with, you'd rather actually go with certain products, if it's faster to build, if it's cheaper, whatever. So for me, if I do have access to the entire feature to play around and maybe get my team to start playing around with, I'd be much more interested in having the value added for the community.
Yeah. So you've got the draw keys for how long are they valid?
Different times. That's a range. Yeah. So what I would say around that, we do that every single day. We are positioning against that company and many others, big ones, on a daily basis. So we know how to position there, and we can help you on that. And we can help showing your developers how to use it. So we are doing that already here. We have some partners.
Okay.
We are developing, that's why we have our VP of partners here. We are developing our partner ecosystems in South Africa.
Okay.
So if you're interested in that,
Yeah,
we can help you on that.
Definitely.
Against the neutralities and all that, we saw something that we can talk about. If you have a project and you need to have it for X amount of time, then exactly the guys outside are the ones to talk about that. They can give you the keys and they can give you all that. Any other questions?
This Rumble, you used basically to specify a REST web service. Do you use it to specify other services or not really?
You mean SOAP or?
Yeah, I think you showed HTTP straight.
Yeah. So it's basically.
Was it actually you mainly use it for REST?
If you want to use it for HTTP, you could do it because it's basically taking things out of REST, right? REST over HTTP. You have a GET, you have a POST. If you want to specify a REST, if you want to specify HTTP API with XML, then you can use that. You can do it because instead of having a JSON schema, you can have an XML schema, and you have an XML example. So there's nothing that prevents you from doing that.
So these tools, but all these tools that you showed, they spec REST or?
There's the definition, the spec, as long as it complies with the spec, you can have anything you want. And the spec, as you can see, can be very simple. As I have a resource, I have a get, a post, and put, a delete, whatever. And then you do implementation of that to do anything you want. So if you don't want it to be RESTful, then you can actually do it.
I think that Studio creates a server, right? Does it create a REST server?
Automatically it doesn't. So the specification is just a text.
Okay.
Then there are a lot of tools
Yes.
that allow you to do different things.
Yeah.
One is create a server with the API key that we show with
But
Mule.
that one you showed in that Eclipse or the Mule Studios.
Yes.
You created the REST server.
I created the implementation of the specification. Okay, so I have my songs Rumble file. I said, okay, now let's create an implementation of this Rumble file. If I take a lot of things out of the specification to have just an XML and so I can have a URI and the definition of what I get and the post does. And then I can implement that, no problem. So you can have a non-RESTful API if you want.
Yeah.
And with our tool, of course, you can have SOAP services, services that listen for messages on JMS, services that listen that port for files. So I didn't show all that, but our integration platform supports a lot of different use cases. Any other question?
We're also going to talk about Tomcat server.
I'm not going to talk about Tomcat, but we can take it offline if you want. Yeah.
There's no more questions then, I think. Thanks very much for coming through and giving the presentation. Glad you guys could all make it. Seems you've got 5 viewers at least online, so that's pretty good. And yeah, first attempt to broadcast, I'm sure we'll get better with time. Yeah, and then afterwards there's still some pizza left and some beer and some Coke and all of that, so feel free to ask questions and interact and find out more information. And there's some business cards from the Muelsofts guys in the back as well if you want to chat to them and learn more about their products and services. But thank you very much for coming for the time and effort. Tomorrow, by the way, there's a whole day event for Muelsofts. If you guys are going to attend that, I'm sure there's still space.
I think so. We need to talk to the guys outside. If you are interested, we have a whole forum. We're running Johannesburg today, tomorrow, and in Cape Town on Thursday, where we show product roadmap, different tools, similar presentation to this one, and also what can you do with the integration platform. We're going to show a simple example of what can you do, and then look at the management console and best practices around how you create projects for real time. That's actually a session from Alan, who's back then, I think.
And just in closing, South Africans, you have a hard time with Argentinians after the Soccer World Cup. But, we'll forgive you, and thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.